It's max OT, DC training, heavy duty, Arthur Jones, Colorado experiment or proper strength training. And then the PhD, the philosophy of heavy duty, or the blood and guts training system by Dorian, right? But it's actually called PhD, right?
When did it start that you came across the lower volume stuff, like the high intensity training, like Arthur Jones, the
Yeah.
originator, and then how it progressed? When did you first get exposed to that?
That's a great question because I know exactly when that happened. It was I was in Florida and it was 2001, and
Oh, that's
I
cool.
came across Max OT, which is the training system from a supplement company called AST-SS, right? Which is AST Sports Sciences. And how did I find them? Through finding mentorship, virtual mentorship with guys like Jeff Willett, which I think you just did
Yeah,
a video with him, right?
yeah, yeah.
And then Skip LaCour, and those guys were like on my radar. Tito Raymond and even Ron Coleman, the natty Ron Coleman back in the day, and then Ade Ray and things like that, right? All these guys started showing up, but those two guys exposed me to that specific supplement company, which then led me down a road of high intensity training via the Max OT training system. That changed everything for me. I went from, I would say, what I thought was a good structured program to now looking back, I was flailing. Once I found Max OT, I found home, right? Because it was the first exposure to a high intensity training protocol. That lower volume, high intensity was the way to maximize not only your strength but also your muscle growth specifically. So I took that really serious, and within a year, I think I maybe a year and a half, I put on another 22 pounds of muscle after having trained for six already. It was pretty dramatic for me. And then came heavy duty. That was 2006. Before that, 2004 was DC training. DC training was the second version of high intensity that came along. Then heavy duty. Then from heavy duty, Mike Mentzer led me to Arthur Jones, or what he called the proper strength training system. And then, of course, Blood and Guts. We all watched Blood and Guts in the 90s when the VHSs came out. That was part of my experience. I understood intensity. I just didn't understand it in a structured way, believing that that was the way to grow, where you could cut volume that low, raise intensity that high, and make the body grow. If I was a smarter bodybuilder in the beginning, I would have just done Blood and Guts from the time I started, which was 95. Blood and Guts came out in 96. And oh, what I would have done now looking back for those extra 4 or 5 years of high intensity training under my belt. But when I saw the changes, I'm like, how much more extreme can I get? So now, after all these years, I have a family of five that I call it, of the high intensity training protocols that I kind of go in and out of, mix and match, kind of, creating my own hybrid. I usually call it the Bruce Lee method, where you take the best out of the best and create your own system, not because the other systems are flawed, but because you have a nuance of your own expression, your own experience that doesn't necessarily always translate from someone else's experience. Now, the foundation of all those methods are valid, but I found that there's some variation that I implement, having the experiences between those family of five high intensity training protocols that work well for me. So you might see me as my kind of like grounding philosophy is DC training, but I'll have a heavy duty approach sometimes, and some training blocks I'll have a max OT approach in other training blocks. And then, you kind of mix and match. In the family of five, I went over them, but just to review, it's max OT, DC training, heavy duty, Arthur Jones, Colorado experiment or proper strength training. And then the PhD, the philosophy of heavy duty, or the blood and guts training system by Dorian, right? But it's actually called PhD, right? The philosophy of heavy duty. So those are my foundational approaches to training, and then the rest is mapping out the what I call the fundamental five of the basic levers that you need to adjust along the way to get the physique transformation you're looking for. So that's training, which I have 5 methods I follow there: nutrition, natural supplementation, recovery, and mindset. So I only kind of put those things together in my mind so I could chunk it down and absorb that information in a way that is palatable for me. Because sometimes you can get overwhelmed with all the information out there, especially now. Everyone's an expert. Everyone has read a study, so it must be the right thing. But that's not necessarily true. Just because it's out there doesn't mean it's workable. Doesn't mean it's practical. Doesn't mean you should even follow it. It just means it's out there. But I have the training systems. Then I have my fundamental five that I focus on. And I have my core four, which would be just a way to approach kind of the intensity of what it takes to build a physique, which is train harder, train less, eat more, and stay more consistent. And that's just kind of a brief overview on the things that I focus on a daily basis. People are like, well, what does train harder mean? Well, whatever you're doing now, train harder than that, meaning raise the intensity and cut the volume. Train less, whatever you're doing now, cut the volume. It doesn't have to be from 5 sets down to one, but you got to start working your way down to get more out of less, or what I say in my world, which is do less better, right? And then eat more. That's pretty basic, right? Most people are under eating and expecting them to be 300-pound shredded bodybuilders, and it's just never going to work. So whatever you're eating now, eat more. Whatever you think you're eating, when it's enough, just eat more than that too. Like, you always have to keep pushing the intensity of that philosophy and the focus on those few things. And then the consistency, the more consistent you can get, you don't even have to get it perfect, but the more consistent you are, the more results you get over a longer period of time. And that's where a lot of people make the mistake that the consistency, even if it's not perfect in action, will always result in a better outcome than if you did it perfect and then you dropped off.
That's really cool. Like that. I didn't know that you kind of weaved in and out. I mean, you know what's funny actually? When I would watch your videos, I'm like, okay, wait, now he's doing the heavy duty. And then now you in this live stream, he's talking about doing like higher frequency. So that did sound like max OT, because max OT was like 5 times a week. Like if we're
Yeah,
looking at the legitimate extreme bodybuilding version of it, not the modified versions that Jeff put out like as templates for the average gym goer, right? Like we're talking like
correct.
the legit one, like 5 days per week, you're going in max OT style. So it's interesting because you would see it, but I never heard you break it down like that. And I'm sure you did in one of your live streams. I probably missed it. Like, have you ever broken it down to this level like before in one of your videos that maybe I missed?
Not to this level, and I think maybe I kind of just throw out pieces.
Yes.
But when I have the opportunity to go deep, I will, and that's why I appreciate doing something like this with you. So
Oh, this is really cool.
yeah,
I'm really appreciating this right now. So, and I'm sure the viewers are too, who follow your work, Paul, and those who are going to now get acquainted with what you how you approach things. So, but it's interesting. Like you have, because you mentioned like you'll. Well, first off, you mentioned Bruce Lee. That's really cool because, yeah, you're like, you take what's useful to you based on your life context, how you approach it. Like, there's all these nuances, little nuances that it's like, okay, just because this person's doing max OT like this, well, how does that apply to how I'm going to do it based on maybe, like you had mentioned, I think you were talking about like recovery, exercise selection, all these things, execution. Maybe this exercise doesn't really work as well for you, but that one does, so that you can overload and actually push yourself. Like all these little nuances, right? Whereas, like, people will see these templates online, but you don't have to follow these templates to the exact, right? You have to make it your own.
exactly. There's a foundation that you can follow, but it's not like the gospel. Like, if you don't follow it, you're going to hell.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
body's very expressive, very forgiving, very adaptable. To know that you can approach things that maybe you would think are out of the realm of what you were taught. For example, I was born and raised in bodybuilding, to put it that way, on Arnold's split. 5 sets. I can still remember it: 15, 12, 10, 8, 6 on like 5 different exercises. I mean, that was what you did, right? So there's how you grow up in the sport, and then there's how you evolve with what you know over time and experience. And I'm not one to follow study just because it was completed and it showed a certain result. That's a snapshot in time. That is an expression of a handful of people that have a certain experience in that. Doesn't mean it's right for you. It doesn't mean that it's actually right for anyone. I forget who it was, but it'll probably rustle some feathers on this, but it was a fairly high level coach in the bodybuilding world. I really wish I remembered. He said bodybuilding science, exercise science is kind of a joke. There's too many factors to put in that are not in a laboratory, that are in actual life. I mean, one factor on its own that stands on its own, everybody can relate to, is just your level of stress. In any given day, it's very dynamic. In any given season in your life, in any given era of your life, meaning any decade of your life. It's going to change from season to season. So that alone could affect the expression of your body, and what worked before might not be sufficient now, right? So you have to adapt with real life. I think Dorian said that if it's not practical, then it's a waste of your time. And while it might show something in the laboratory, we don't live in a laboratory, we this is real life. And I always equate it to going to school for business versus being a business owner in the real world. There's a lot of foundational things you learn in school, but it doesn't teach you when you get punched in the face by a customer that costs you $100,000 that month or that year, how to come through that as an entrepreneur, as a business owner. It doesn't necessarily teach you human dynamics and cultural expectations and location dominant responses and you name it. I mean, there's just an unlimited amount of variables, right? It's the same thing with the body. You can go to school for the body, but then there's the real world. Then there's the toxic overload, the stress, the deficiencies. How does your body respond to carbs versus fats or fats versus carbs? How inflamed are you? What were your epigenetics? How did you grow up? What was your influence from your parents? Like, how is the home environment? There's so many different things that play a part that there will be a textbook way to do a bicep curl. And then there will be the real way in the real world to do that bicep curl and make it grow. Okay. You don't want to dismiss either one. You want to learn. And this is what I teach myself on a daily basis and my clients over the years. You want to learn to bridge the gap between the textbook or the school and nature, which is reality. You find the sweet spot between the two, and you probably found the best scenario for you to, in this case, have the most robust expression of your physique in a natural context and do it for a long time.
That was very well put, Paul. It's interesting. You mentioned the 5 high intensity type
Training philosophies, yeah.
philosophy. There it is.
Yeah.
What dictates, this will be interesting for the listeners, what dictates how you, like where you're gonna go month to month? Like you mentioned training blocks, like do you have it, are you like meticulous or is it like a bit more intuitive? Like, all right, based on how I'm recovering, how my life is going right now, time wise, business wise, maybe, oh, maybe we're going to do more abbreviated workouts versus like maybe a longer type workout. So we're going to do maybe more max OT or like, or heavy duty. Like what's, I'm just giving examples now, but how do you think through this to program this out for yourself? And is it like really structured or is it more like kind of week to week?
That's also a great question. I think in the beginning it was very structured. It was very set in stone. I was kind of militant about it, especially with Max OT being the first iteration of high intensity training that I came across over time. And I gave that approach to each philosophy that I came across. Once I came across it, I'm like, oh, this is similar but different. But let me give it a real shot and put in the 100% so I could see the results for myself, right? And see if it's worthy of keeping in the mix. And they all were. And now having, let's see, after 2006 is where everything came. I mean, I had all 5 philosophies under my belt by 2006 at that point, right? So a lot of growth between 2004 and 6, between being exposed to the additional 4 post Max OT. So now I felt kind of armed to not only experiment with it, but also evolve from it and with it for myself. So while I still create plans that are very structured for my clients in a beginner's way, because first you have to know what to do and you need to know how to do it. Then you have to learn how to do it better. And then you have to learn how to do it better for you and your goals. Okay. So there is a structure that I follow. And in a training context, I call them training blocks. I think the phrase now is the mesocycle. Every training block is about 6 to 8 weeks long for me. And while I will sometimes choose like the specific training philosophy and implement that over those 6 to 8 weeks, majority of the time there's a blend of one or a few, right?
So
And there's
sorry to pause
go
you for a
ahead.
second. Sorry to pause you.
Yeah.
Don't lose your thought. For those tuning in, like it's very important that you understand there are differences between every single philosophy that you brought up, like Max OT versus Heavy Duty versus Dorian Yates's, like even from like a frequency standpoint via the templates, right? We're talking about like you can see it clearly in the templates, exercise
Yes.
selection, even
Yes.
like session length. Like I was just talking with Jeff Willett. It's like even like the session length, it can be different for all these types of or these different approaches, if you will, or philosophies of high intensity training. Because Arthur Jones was known for keeping workouts, at least in the earlier part of how he approached it. They were quite long. Some of these workouts are like 90 minutes. I remember Mike Mentzer did an article that was talking like the full body workouts that he did leading up to the Olympia were like incapacitating. They were like 2 hours long because they were like full on like full leg day, full back day, all in one.
Yes.
So just for
Yes.
those tuning in, there's like no like it's cool to break down that history on your own time, just to for those listening to get an idea, right? So, anyways,
Correct. Yes. Learn the specific format of each template of each philosophy, and then adapt from there.
it's interesting because I start thinking, I'm like, okay, the $1 million question, people are wondering, did one really grow you more? Like the heavy duty versus how you're approaching it now? Would you say like one is noticeably giving you better gains if you've run the personal experiment long term and things
Yeah.
they're relatively dialed in on both sides,
Yeah.
nutrition, etc.
If I had to put them in an order, which I don't like because then it makes people think that they should do the same order of importance under their experience. Because the results I got, maybe they think they'll get the same results if they're like, well, if Paul says this is the most effective one, then that's got to be the case. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying from my experience. Because it was my first one, Max OT worked the best for me. Okay. Because I was new. Not because it means that that was the best one. It's because I was new to high intensity. If I started DC training, which was the second one, as the first iteration of high intensity training, I'm sure I would give that credit as being the most effective. What I do know is I can always lean into DC training as being the most consistently effective for me. Okay. So if I had to put it in order, I would say DC training, blood and guts, max OT, heavy duty, and then Arthur Jones.
Ah, okay.
And
Yeah,
that's the reason
you're,
is
go ahead. Yeah.
the reason is I put heavy duty fourth is because results for me come in the form of physical, mental, and emotional health. I couldn't quite get the full impact of the mental health benefit in a heavy duty scenario because there were so many days off. Okay. And I didn't get in the rhythm, and I like the rhythm of the workouts and the going to the gym and the rituals of that. Right. That's the only reason I put it in fourth. The training, the physical responses were great. They're just as effective as any other one, but the most effective for me in my version and definition of effective, which is the physical, mental, and emotional effectiveness, it would be DC training. I can dial in on that philosophy with the benefit of the physical. I can mess with frequency in a way that doesn't hurt me, and that keeps me emotionally stable and mentally healthy.